Hello world, it's Kurtis Potter with Boundless Inspiration. So I had somebody reach out to me and say, Kurtis, I appreciate your videos. They've helped me out a lot in life, but they requested that I did a series on relationships. I said, well, perfect, because that's something where I've been in a lot of relationships in my life. Up and down. I've seen both sides of the fence where I've seen the flaws in the other person. I could see with my own eyes, and I struggled to communicate to where they could receive it. So they may have taken it as an attack and the relationship failed. I've also witnessed how many times I was the cause of that. See, I was always good at looking back at things. Like I never quite handled everything perfectly in the heat of the moment, but I was really good at evaluating after, like, oh, Kurtis, you did that wrong. Kurtis, you did that wrong. And it helped me, maybe for the next relationship if I worked on it. And so I don't have a degree in helping people in relationships. I just have a degree of relationships from the school of the hard knocks and messing up plenty of them. I can humbly admit that there was plenty of them that was likely my fault. And a lot of times it was because I really didn't want to settle down, and I probably should have just communicated that. That would have been the fair thing to do to the female in the relationship. But I had to admit that it was because I had ulterior motives. Usually it's because I was trying to get in bed with them. And if you went into a relationship and said, hey, I'm not really trying to settle down, what's the chances of that? So it's a hard thing to admit. Guys, it's not the right thing to do. Females, if you're doing the same thing, just communicate. And in today's age, you can just say that to some people and they'll be okay with it. Do I think that the Lord above is going to ask me about some of those decisions I made on the day that I meet my maker? Absolutely. It's just something that I'm going to have to own up to. Not only I'm doing right now, but when I get up there. So speaking on relationships, now I think this is for life in general, but specifically in relationships, the best place to start is the man in the mirror. If you want your life to be different, start with the man or woman in the mirror. If you want your relationship to be different, start with the man in the mirror. I've tried to change people, in different types of way, like forcing them or trying to lead them or whatever. You can't change anybody but yourself, and you can't change unless you are able and willing to look in the mirror, take ownership, and become the best version of yourself. So first of all, if you're trying to get in a relationship, that's what I recommend. Focus on yourself and look where you can grow and where you can become the best version of yourself. So I have two books that I brought in today that have helped me out tremendously: The 5 Love Languages and The Love Dare. Now, the 5 love languages, I suggest anybody that is even contemplating getting in a relationship, read that book. It talks about how men and women, we're completely different. And it's almost like women speak Spanish, men speak English, or whatever the opposite language. And I don't know if you've ever had an interaction with somebody with a different background and speaks a different language. And like if you're trying to get them to see, or you're trying to communicate, you could point at things and you likely will end up getting to understand each other of what you want done, even though you couldn't even speak words to each other. But that's not the best form of communication. See, the best thing would be is if the woman spoke English and Spanish and the guy spoke English and Spanish. Well, this book breaks that down, and it's all about communication. So yesterday I spoke on what goes into your mind. It normally comes into your thoughts and ends up coming into your words and translates into actions. So if you're wanting a healthy relationship, I suggest, just like I said yesterday, reading books. So I'm not the professional, but there's plenty of professionals and doctors who have written books and psychologists. The 5 Love Languages is a great one to start. The Love Dare, I do feel like, is a little bit reactive. Like it's a book that you kind of read if you're in the heat of a relationship and it's struggling. But also, I think if somebody actually read that before, like if I would have read that before going into a relationship, then I think it would have brought a lot of value as well. So first, start with the man and woman in the mirror. Read as many books as you can. If you really authentically want a great relationship and a great life, start reading books, because it's a great teacher. Even if you're not planning on going to college, Tony Robbins says read 20 minutes a day, and he's probably one of the smartest guys I've heard talk and achieving the most in the world. Now, going into a relationship. So the thing is, I came in here into the shop where we have the workout machine. So relationships are like this machine. I'll tell you, I had to clean it off the other day because it hadn't been getting use, and I wanted to use it. And I was just laughing at it. But it really made me think this morning when I was thinking about relationships is it doesn't work if you don't work it. And like a muscle, you'd be like, oh, you know what? My arms, they look a little bit better when I don't have a shirt on, actually. But my muscles would get weak if I'm not working them. Now, having a physically laboring job, you know what? They still aren't weak, like, some little skinny thing. So, like, for instance, your relationship, it may work for a little while. It may be okay if you don't work it. It may be okay if you don't read the books, if you don't go to marriage counseling, if you don't go to counseling, if you don't go to church, they can manage. But I've also seen relationships where, for instance, I know this husband and wife, and they cuss each other almost every single day. It's sad. One time I even had to say, hey, man, my kids are with me. Can you guys, we love you to death. And they're like, well, if you don't like it, get off our property. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to walk my kids over here. But it was just a shame because that same person had told me, don't judge our relationship. We love each other to death. And I was like, you know what? I do believe that you love each other. But if you can't see that that's toxic, and then, we spent the whole night and stayed the night there at their property, and they went to bed, woke up the next morning like nothing ever happened. And the next day they were great. You couldn't even tell that they had gotten a fight like that. But it was like, man, you guys aren't working this relationship. You're just existing in this relationship. You're not being intentional about making it the best it could be. And I see that they love each other. I don't think they'll ever get a divorce. They'll spend the rest of their lives together. But is their relationship the best that it could be? Are they working it? Can you ask that wife and have her honestly, without trying to lie and bullshit you, could she honestly say, man, our relationship is the best that it could be? If you looked at him, could you say it's the best it could be? If you looked at her and said, do you feel like he does everything possible to create butterflies in your stomach, to make sure you're happy, to make sure your dreams and goals are getting achieved? No, it's not my responsibility for my wife's happiness. But at the same time, this is a partnership. This is a teamwork. And if you're in a relationship where you say that you love that person and you're not intentionally working on it to inspire them and bring them up and help them, teamwork makes the dream work, baby. And if you're not trying to help your spouse every way possible, then what are you in it for? Just so you can exist in a relationship and it just being okay? We get to live on this earth for one time. Why would you not just say, I want my life to be the best that it could be. I want my relationship to be the best it could be. I want it to be boundless. So you know what? The thing is I used to hit these things so hard before I got married. Then you start having kids, and then you start this and that, and jobs and business. And we have a non-for-profit called Boundless Youth, and you get busy. And next thing you know, I was getting that dad bod. So the thing is, too, is if you stop working it, it can go downhill as well. If you stop using these weights, your muscles are going down instead of up, right? So the thing is like we start having kids. We bought a house that needed all kinds of work. And then, it was like we get in some fights, and it was like, what are we even getting that fight for? And it was because we kind of had really stopped working it. You got to be intentional about working it. And again, I'm going to go back to my buddies. I have 2 friends that have been going to marriage counseling almost their whole marriage. My one buddy, everybody that sees their marriage, they say, man, I wish I had that marriage. And he said, hey, we've been going to marriage counseling since the week after our honeymoon. And you know what? We started off going every week. Now we go just once a month. Hey, I think you should go to marriage counseling. I'm too prideful. I'm not going to pay my money for a marriage counselor. There's nothing wrong with us. Well, you know what? There wasn't nothing wrong with them and their marriage. They was just got out of their honeymoon. They still had the butterflies in the eyes. But you know what? They knew what they wanted. They were intentional about having the best marriage that they could possibly have. And that's what they have. They was intentional. They didn't stop working out those weights. They didn't get that dad bod. They were intentional about it. You know what? I started waking up at 4 a.m., sometimes 3, sometimes 5, so that I could be intentional about the time I got with God. That I could be intentional about working out, and I wasn't distracted because my kids can really cut down my focus on reading and notes and my workout. I love them to death, but I had to start focusing on me time. I had to keep on filling up my cup because, again, the relationships start with the man in the mirror. You could go from job to job to job to job, and if you don't work on you and your work ethic and your accountability and showing up early, because if you're on time, you're late, and if you're early, you're on time. So if you can't work on showing up 15 minutes early because you're like, I don't clock in till 8 o'clock, well, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if it's showing up in your job like that, it's probably showing up in your relationships like that. So my question to you is, how bad do you want an amazing relationship? Do you want to keep pointing those fingers? Because you know what I keep saying. You point that finger and you've got 3 pointing back at you and 1 up at the sky. And that's for a reason. Because if you just focus on the 3 pointing back at you, God's the one that's paying attention, and he's going to reward you. Is your spouse begging you for months, please go to marriage counseling with me? Well, you know what? Take some ownership. So if you're seeking a relationship, I say a couple things that are very important. Please listen to me. Don't rush into them. That's one of the worst mistakes I made, was rushing into a relationship. 2, make sure your core values and your goals are aligned. Authenticity, ownership, accountability, partnership, teamwork. For me and my family, we worship the Lord. My house, we worship God. It's a commitment. So if you needed to hear this, please like, share, comment. If you know someone else did, please share, comment so they all can hear it. Because every single day, we're just getting a step closer to being boundless, especially in relationships. If you don't work it, it won't work. Let's all do this together and have the best relationships with our spouses. This is the one that today was about spouses. I'll talk about some other relationships the next couple of days in this series on relationships. I hope this helped you. Please give me some feedback. If there's something else you want me to talk about this week in relationships, just let me know. I love you all. Have a great day. Be boundless.